Good evening. The board meeting, the Rancho board meeting for Monday, July 26, 2021 is now in session. Kim, can you take, we will start tonight with our Pledge of Allegiance given by Wynn Coleman. Please all rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Kim, can you go ahead and take a roll call for us?
Yes, ma'am, I can. President Galbraith.
Present.
Vice President Morgan.
Present.
Secretary Scott.
Present.
Board Member Coleman.
Present.
And Board Member Cullen.
Present.
Okay, that's a quorum and everybody's here.
Thank you so much, Kim. We'd like to welcome everyone out to our meeting tonight, everyone who's joining us through YouTube, all of our district staff, and all those who have come to join our meeting tonight. We're happy to have you. We're going to start off our meeting tonight with some introductory comments by the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. V. Sue Cleveland. You with us, Doc? There we go.
Yeah, good evening. I'm waiting for my PowerPoint to come up.
She's pulling up right now.
It's coming. Even as we speak, it's coming.
Okay. The last few have been kind of short because we've been kind of a little bit of a lull. Tonight I have quite a bit of information to share with the board.
Okay, do you see it, Dr. Cleveland?
I do. Thank you so much. All right. Next slide, please.
Okay, now this question is, can I make it change? Hang on, Dr. Cleveland. We're going to switch presenters here.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, you should have it now.
Yes, we're good here. We're good. Okay, I thought I'd give just a very brief update on summer school, and I think we have some very good information to share. Our summer school program was very successful this year, and all the sessions are now complete. Our high school summer school saw 1,314 credits earned versus the normal around 350 to 400. That was an absolutely incredible task. A special thanks to Principals Moore and Lockhart and all of the staff, and a huge congratulations to our students for reaching that goal. I want you to know that in the summer school, we provided 2 classes for each session, which allowed students to obtain more credits than in the past. And so this 1,314 credits actually represents 800 students who went to school this summer to recover credits. We had 30 teachers who worked this summer, and our teachers were really tired. You know, it was a real sacrifice for them to work this summer in many cases. And so we had 30 teachers. 2 of our counselors helped during the session to ensure that all of our students were taking the right classes in the right order. And some of the folks from CTE and RADA played a role in helping get things organized. It was really a community effort among departments. And I just want to thank everybody because the end result was better than we had hoped, and we're just delighted with the numbers. Several of our board members did participate in the summer school graduation last week, and that's always a very nice event. And normally students who finish up in July are not part of the 2021 class, but an exception was made this year, and so they will be part of the class of 2021. We also had 131 elementary students who attended summer school. Some of them were just parent requests. They were not all candidates for retention, but a few would have been. And the really good news out of that is that all 131 students who did attend summer school were promoted to the next grade level. And then at the middle school level, we didn't have the traditional summer school. There were some different things that they did throughout the year at the middle schools. But we did have 9 students who were retained, but all of those were at parent request. They were not retained by the school. They were decisions that the parents made that they wanted the extra year, and most of them were at the 6th grade. So students who had not really had an opportunity to be in a traditional 6th grade. But again, that was at the parents' request and not at the school districts. So as we look at, the summer was very short. And so it was a real challenge to accomplish projects that would have generally, where in the past, we would have had 3 months for completion. We certainly had plans to deal with this new situation. What has really caused our projects to be behind schedule has been a huge, effort in terms of supply and demand. And so there's just some things not available. You just can't get them. And in many cases, the vendors can't even tell you when they might be available. So that's turning out to be a problem for some of our projects. And certainly getting ready for the start of school was a challenge this year for every department. But I would say that finance, IT, and facilities probably have the greatest challenges in getting ready for the start of school. I want the board to be aware that we have some major facility challenges at a few schools. Many items have been delayed and back ordered, and they are not, certain projects are not running on schedule. And as I said earlier, it's hard to get any kind of a date from some of the vendors. Melanie Archibald, our executive director for facilities, was out inspecting schools today. She and I and some others will be meeting tomorrow. Excuse me. And as soon as I get solid information, that will be communicated to the board, staff, parents, and community. And we will send that information out as soon as possible. Melanie was out last week, so she is certainly working very hard to get that information available to administration, and we will get it to you as well. Staff return next week. Our convocation is August the 4th, and we are doing a combined virtual convocation with the Cuba and Jemez Valley school districts. I do want to let you know that Lucinda is helping to sponsor this event, and we're always thankful for their support and allowing us to do some very special things for our staff. And so they will be part of this event. Middle school students are scheduled to, and high school, are scheduled to return on August the 5th, and our elementary students are scheduled to return on the 9th. And we are so excited to have our staff and students back to in-person learning and virtual learning, depending on the choices that were made by each family. We finally got the toolkit. We've been looking for the toolkit since the first of the summer, and we finally got it. I've had a couple of people in the community call and say, what is a toolkit? And so I thought I would kind of share what that is. It is a collection of authoritative and adaptable resources for frontline staff that enables them to learn about an issue and identify approaches for addressing them. Toolkits can help translate theory into practice and typically target one issue or one audience. And the issue is back to school, one of the rules for reentry and reopening our schools in the fall. And so they give practical advice and guidance and Usually you get toolkits when things are not the norm, when you don't have established processes and procedures in place, and things are changing very, very rapidly. And of course, that's what we've been dealing with for the last 15 months. And so we did get another toolkit, and it provides the structure for us reopening. It's a little bit frustrating that we're opening in a week and we got the toolkit at noon today. But we do have it. We're glad to have it. And we're now in the process of going through, reading, reviewing, trying to determine if we are in compliance with all of the requirements of the toolkit. So toolkits are considered guidelines and support for the operation of our schools by the public ed department, but these are also compliance documents, and they have been enforced last year by both virtual visits, and we had several in-person visits from the public ed department to determine that we in fact were in compliance with all of those regulations. And as I said, we've been waiting for it for a long time. Several of us attended a meeting last week with the secretary in hopes of getting the toolkit, but it was still being reviewed by the medical staff in the governor's office, and we were very, very glad to get it today. The provisions, one of the things that they told us when we got the toolkit and in the meeting is this is the directives as of the situations that we're dealing with right now. Things could change again if the number of cases go up, particularly if the Delta variant begins to spread. And what we have to know, these are the rules right now, but they were very clear. Circumstances changes, cases go up. We could see some more restrictive requirements put into place. So we all have a stake in trying to keep everybody safe and well. And we had really good support last year from our staff and our students and families, and we know that will continue. But it certainly is in all of our best interests to keep us as well as possible so our schools can continue to operate as we plan to operate them in the fall. The one area that has been the most contentious out of all of them has to do with the wearing of masks and the rules and regulations around masks. And so we'll talk to you a little bit about that a little later in Beth's presentation. But and many of the requirements from the previous documents, the previous toolkits, such as processes for reporting confirmed cases and some other things, will continue. We were hoping to have pretty much a lift of all of those regulatory things off of our plate, but that did not happen. And so Beth will go into much greater detail in her presentation later this evening. Okay, and we're getting this, we've already gotten this information out to staff, so they have had an opportunity to start reading it. We've already had communication from the union regarding the toolkit. And so we have begun the process of getting everyone a copy that has a desire to see it. There was some regulatory relief in the toolkit. One of the areas I thought was very useful is we have a lot more flexibility for chronic health conditions as opposed to acute ones. So I'll give you an example of what that might look like. Every year you have seasonal allergies. They're really bad. You have a runny nose, you have a sore throat, you have all the signs. But every year you get this, and your doctor will verify that and send us a form that states that. So if we have that form, you don't have to be quarantined. You have those conditions. However, if you have an acute condition come on, serious sore throat, you've never had a runny nose, you're running a fever, those would be things that would be considered acute, and you would still need to follow the guidelines for quarantining. There are a lot of requirements that will demand a great deal of staff time, which are going to remain in place. Things like contact tracing, the 4-hour requirement for notifying the state if we have an active case. There's still a lot of things that are in place that are going to be very time consuming for staff. Last year we had people that were working 7 days a week and long hours every day until 9 or 10 at night. So we'll be making some organizational changes to deal with those continuing expectations, and hopefully we'll lift the load off of at least some of the load off of some of the people who had to work way beyond the workday for months. As I said, everything is subject to change. One of the things that they told us is if we have a situation in our district where we start seeing cases rise, then we have the responsibility of implementing more stringent rules should the situation warrant it in our district. The percentage of our staff and students vaccinated will continue to influence the decisions that are made in Santa Fe. And if and when the vaccine becomes no longer experimental, then they anticipate additional changes might be forthcoming. And we don't know what that would be, when that would be, or what that might look like. But they just told us once it's an experimental vaccine, then things could possibly change. Our school nurses, who were just critical last year, will continue to play a key role in the assessment of student health issues at every school site. Any student who is complaining of having any kind of symptoms, the nurses are responsible for assessing each child, which is one of the reasons that we really do not want them to get into the regular testing for the virus. We want them to be able to work with the students at the school site rather than become the mechanism for testing in our schools and community. We really feel they already work at very large schools and already have a very heavy load. Isolation rooms will still be required. We were hoping that we might not need those this year because of the need for space in our schools, but they are still required, and we'll continue to have an isolation room as well as the nurse's office. The one thing that I thought was really, really important, and I wanted to convey to you, was the commitment. We really sense the commitment to do our very best to keep the schools open. Here's a quote that came out of the toolkit. It said the New Mexico Public Education Department recognizes the importance of in-person learning for academic, social, and emotional growth of students, as well as for the livelihood of families and the economic growth of the community. And so certainly the rules for quarantining individuals or shutting down schools is going to be much more lenient this year. We still have some requirements, such as closing classrooms for 24 hours to sanitize when there has been a confirmed case in classroom or in specific areas of a school building. And then this is the one that's very interesting because we had a lot of discussion about that earlier. Parent choice related to in-person or remote learning should be honored. And so a lot of the concern was when they made it somewhat optional, many districts dropped it. And now we're back to where it is expected that it has to be delivered. So that has created a really interesting situation because the public ed department is now asking districts that have online learning at various levels to assist those districts who don't have it. And we, of course, that could be problematic. Next slide, please. One of the things that we're going to have to provide the state is to identify a process for ensuring compliance with mask requirements. And some of the things are not hard to do. Posting signage in school facilities, we can certainly do that. Announcing the mask requirements at all events is certainly something we could do, and other necessary means for enforcement. We're going to get into this in more detail in Beth's presentation, so I'm not going to say a lot about it. Probably the biggest concern that we do have is the enforcement of that and what that will look like. And one of the things that is in the toolkit said evidence of vaccination must be visible at all times. And so trying to figure what that will look like and concerns over privacy, as well as trying to meet this mandate. And those seem to be, polar opposites in some respects. So that's something that we're going to have to work on. And also our hope that our staff, especially teachers, will spend their time teaching rather than policing masks. And so that's something we're going to have to work on. We'll be needing to bring that back to the board because we're such a short time away now from the start of school. I would anticipate that we're going to have a special meeting to address that issue and a couple of others that we're required to have in place. Let's see. One of the things we are worried about is these new requirements may, in fact, impact our student enrollment in a negative manner. And that could have an impact on us financially and impact our schools. So we're hoping that's not the case, but we think that's a possibility. And certainly we are getting some mask guidance from the public ed department. There's a one-pager that they want us to distribute to all of our families, and they are providing it in both English and Spanish. And this whole idea of FERPA and people's privacy rights is somewhat at odds with the idea of having everyone, whether they're vaccinated or not, that evidence in full display at all times. And we aren't quite sure how we would go about making that happen. We've been assured that we would be in compliance with FERPA, but we're still somewhat worried about it in terms of our own past experiences and training that we've had. I think I've covered that. One of the things the board will have to decide and will need to be done very soon. Students are to be given a chance. They are to be warned if they are not wearing a mask, but we need to set the number of times a warning would have to be issued before they would be assigned to remote learning. So that's a local decision in terms of how many times you would have to be reminded. Next slide. Last year, as you will recall, we had a very large number of vacancies when we started the school year. Very worried about how we were going to manage that. And I want you to know that we're in a much better place this school year. We're really very optimistic about our staffing. We think we have really good news in that area. And so Mike Chavez, our Executive Director for Human Resources, is going to present an updated report for you this evening on hiring and vacancies, but it is certainly a far better situation than we had last year. He is going to present another beginning of the year report in September after we have better data regarding enrollment numbers. Right now, really all we have are registration numbers, and that's not always the most reliable of information. So he will tell you what it actually looks like after we get underway and how many classrooms we are still looking for someone if you have anything. I mentioned earlier, and if you recall, we had this conversation with the board about the feel that we had a need to offer remote learning at all levels because we felt like that what happened, that actually we thought it might happen. So I'm really glad we're in good shape. We are seeing right now a good number of families transfer over to remote because of the information that's coming out related to masks. And so I'm glad we have places for them to go. We had originally a pretty good number of parents who chose remote elementary, middle school, and high school. And we've been asked to assist other districts. The Secretary in Fairness has strongly recommended districts to be prepared to offer virtual learning, but some districts did not do so. And so we're reviewing the requests. And, as a district, we always try to help. We always try to assist. But we're finding it very challenging to help at this late date. If we had started in June and been thinking about how to partner with other districts, it would have been a much easier process. I think right now we're in a situation where we've got to take care of our own students first. And then if we do have some openings, we will try to assist. And I do know one district is going to offer a virtual school starting in September after they see how many students are still wanting services and how many of our students, how many slots we have in the classes that we're offering our students. So it's, you know, we always try to help. And the state is offering financial support for our districts who are willing to take students from other school systems. And it's a reasonable amount of funding. For example, I think at the high school level, it's 300, I forget exactly, 350 a course or something like that. But again, we've got to be sure that we have managed to take care of our students first, and then we will look to see. I think the ability to offer assistance outside of our district will be minimal, but there may be a few opportunities, and certainly if we have some vacancies under the Open Enrollment Act, we would be required to take them regardless. But it's just, we wish we had gotten started on this a whole lot earlier. We're also thinking of trying to help districts closest to us, for example, like Haines Valley, a very small district that really cannot offer both, would struggle with that. So we had some discussions with Supercell about the possibility of that. But anyway, we'll bring that back, and once we know a little more. The information from the state was very sketchy. We're just not sure it's going to work very well for us. Okay, next slide, please. In the spring, I'm sorry, I've got allergies and I am kind of dealing with that. Dr. Happy Miller, our Executive Director for Research, Assessment, Data Analysis, and Accountability, will present this evening two of the surveys that were administered during the spring semester of last year. And the first was the Opportunity to Learn survey, which has a PED. It's a PED survey, and it's administered via a Cognia platform. And then the second was a comprehensive spring 2021 student satisfaction and safety survey. I hope these surveys may answer some of the questions that the board had about where we are, how families are feeling about the district, and so forth, where we think that there's some really good information to share with you this evening. I would again remind the board that we are now entering this year into our Cognia accreditation review. District-wide accreditation is underway. There will be many different avenues for input this year regarding the district and its programs and services. The Rio Rancho Public Schools Accreditation Task Force, which is comprised of lots of different people, strongly recommends that we align all of our efforts with the Cognia accreditation effort, as opposed to other feedback mechanisms this year. They think that it would be an unnecessary duplication of effort and expenditures. And so those are the questions, the presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have. If they're specific to the toolkit, I would recommend that you let Beth do her presentation, because I think she's going to answer many of the questions in her presentation. But of course, I'll answer any questions that you might have now.
Go ahead, Noreen.
How much latitude do we have to deviate from the protocols that the state has given us?
We don't have any in most cases, unless they specifically say we have latitude. So it is, the toolkit is considered a compliance document.
So if masks are mandated, there's nothing we as a school board can do to change that, or any other ruling. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, is that correct?
That's correct. This is under the public health orders, and the courts have deemed the public health orders to have the enforcement of law. And so we are required to adhere to those regulations with one exception. And the one exception is that we can make it more stringent if we wish to do so. I know that one other larger district, for example, I give you an example of that, is talking about, and I don't think they have made a final decision, but they're talking about masks in all classrooms across their district for a variety of reasons. So you can become more stringent, but you can't do any less than what is required in the toolkit.
Thank you, Dr. Cleveland.
Okay, anyone else, if you want to just raise your hand if you have any questions, any other board members? Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cleveland. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move to item E, to approve the prioritized agenda and proposed time allocations. Any questions on that?
This is Secretary Scott. I move to approve the prioritized agenda.
Okay, we have a
This is
second.
Board Member Jeff Morgan, I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Noreen Scott and a second by Jeffrey Morgan. Kim, can you take a roll call vote for us?
Yes, I can. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Cullen,
Yes.
Board Member Coleman,
Yes.
President Galbraith,
Yes.
and that is 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Okay. So for our public comment for tonight, let me grab that. So for tonight, our public comment, we have six public comments that we have received from our last board meeting. I'll summarize those comments with the names of those who sent them in. So we received one from Devin Holloman, which was a question about when we will know about the mask mandate for schools. The second one was from Suzanne Nicole Gray with two things. She was asking that we allow parents to make the choice for their children to wear masks at school or not. And the second thing was to allow our children to meet their teachers early before school goes in. And the third one is from Crystal Zaragoza, that she would like us to have all students wear masks in school. Fourth one, Denise Weaver, do not allow teachers to teach critical race theory in our schools at this time. The fifth one, Lisa Paz, asking that there be a mask mandate in place in schools, and that we do that for those who are unable to be vaccinated at this time. And the sixth one is from Cheryl Daniels, which was on that there's not a contract that has been signed yet for our teachers as they're going back into school. And the second one is that there not be a mask mandate requirement in our schools, and that people are allowed to have a choice on what they would like to do. That summarizes all of our public comment that we've received. If you would like to address the board through public comment, please go to the RRPS board page. There's a form on that page where you can give your public comment. We do read each and every one of those public comments, and we welcome them. And so we encourage our community to continue to give those public comments as you would like. Okay. Moving on to item G, which is our commendations. We have one tonight, and that will be given by Noreen Scott, recognizing the curriculum and instruction of federal, bilingual, and Native American programs, our staff who do those things. So Secretary Scott, I'll hand it over to you.
Yes, I apologize that I have not got that statement in front of me. I would like to commend their hard work and effort, especially our team who has done a wonderful job through COVID in working on that. And I apologize that I would like to have the statement in front of me to do it at the next meeting.
Okay. Can we move that? Noreen, would you like to move that commendation to our next meeting? Is that
yes, please.
Okay. Kim, can you take note of that we can move that commendation to our next meeting?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Okay, for those who are on for that, we love you dearly. And so please come onto our next meeting and we'll make sure that we get that commendation.
Please accept my apology.
Done at our next meeting. Okay. Okay. So we will move on to our reports. And so we'll start with our report tonight. Our first one is our personnel update that will be given by Mike Chavez, who's our Executive Director of Human Resources.
Good evening, President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. Everybody hear me okay? Thank you. So I just have a very brief presentation for you this evening to give you a little bit of information about where we're at with the hiring of personnel for the coming school year. This information is as of 7:15, and as Dr. Cleveland said, I will have another presentation in September, which will more than likely show you a different picture of our hiring, because as she said, we have actually seen quite an increase and an uptick in the number of applications in most areas and in the amount of hiring that we've been able to do. Next slide, please. So as I said, please take these as very preliminary numbers. We are still in the process. We're still processing many of our PARs, or personnel action requests, from the principals at the schools. Most of the principals returned to their sites on July 13th, but I just want to point out that the majority of them worked right through their time off because they were very eager to make sure that they took advantage of the people that were applying for teacher positions, EA positions, and other positions like that. Next slide, please. I've listed here the typical, very critical positions that we need to have in place in order to really get the school year started. Of course, there's many other positions that have opened up over the summer that are in the process of being hired for. But I'd like to just very quickly, and before I even go through these numbers, I want to point out we are having a job fair tomorrow evening. So anybody listening, if you are interested, we will be available to speak with people about pretty much any position available in the district. We are specifically holding the job fair for positions such as custodians, bus drivers, security officers, substitute teachers, EAs, educational assistants. But if anybody else wants to come by, if anyone in the community has a question even about how to become a teacher, how to, acquire any other position that they're interested in that's available in the district, please don't hesitate. Stop by. We'll be in the training center tomorrow evening from 4 to 6:30, and we will have lots and lots of personnel there waiting to answer your questions. Right now, we have approximately 4 bus driver positions open. Custodians are probably fewer than that because we've actually had some good luck this year with a number of people applying for custodial positions. 25 sounds high, but when you remember we had 40 just a few weeks ago, 40 openings, that's a pretty good number. 25 is a much better number than where we were at even just 2 or 3 weeks ago. Counselors, we were at 6, but I know that our new executive director of student services, Sherry Carver, has been very busy interviewing counselors, so I know that we have some of those in the works. Social workers, we are still looking for 2 people. General education teachers. And again, remember, a lot of these positions, such as teachers, we have a number of personnel action requests in the works, but they're higher pending, so we can't include them in these numbers until they receive a clear background, we have their I-9 documents, and so on and so forth. So at that time last week, we had 12 general ed openings and 18 special ed openings. That's actually not bad, considering the time of year that we were looking at that. Again, in September, I think you're going to see a much better picture. We have a number of people that we are continuing to hire. Health assistants, at that time, we were looking at 3 openings. Educational assistants are the area where we're honestly having the most difficulty finding folks to fill those positions. We had 43 openings as of last week. So if anybody knows somebody who's looking for a really great position, you get to be in the classroom, get to be with kids, get to work with kids, It really is a terrific job. And, if you have kids at home, you get summers off, you get winter break, you get spring break, you get lots of breaks. And it really is a great job. Our schools are just such amazing places to work. And I will just, I would just encourage people, we have openings. So please apply and take a look at those positions. So that is my brief report for this evening, and I stand for questions.
Okay, thank you so much for that report. I want you to know I posted on my Facebook right as you said it. I was like, I better put this up, the job fair. So I just threw that up. If anyone else wants to put that, you can at the board on the school website or on the district website, you can just post the link. So anyway, so thanks, Mike, for that. I will go to the board now for questions, and we'll start with Catherine. Catherine, you have any questions?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Wynn?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Actually, guys, it's so weird in the boardroom because I hear everyone like an echo of everyone's voices. It's so weird. Noreen, Scott?
No questions. Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Jeffrey Morgan?
No questions. Thanks for the update. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And Dr. Cleveland, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you covered it nicely. We just hope if you know of anyone, spread the word that we're looking and we're hiring, and hope that they will come and join us.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. Thank you so much, Mike. We really appreciate the update on all those things, and hopefully we can get some people to come to that job fair tomorrow. That would be fantastic.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
You too. Okay, our next report will be our spring opinion surveys. Happy Miller, our Executive Director of Research, Assessment, Data Analysis, and Accountability, also known as RADA, is here to present.
Thank you. Good evening, President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. As we move into this school year, it's always good to look back and reflect on some of the feedback that we received about last year and see what we can learn from it for this coming year. Next slide, please. Throughout the year, we conducted a number of small-scale feedback surveys through School Messenger, Google Forms. So, some of the feedback I was hearing is there are too many surveys, but there were 3 major surveys throughout the year. One was in the fall, the Learning Experience Survey, and then we had 2 in the spring. And the 2 in the spring we conduct every year. Next slide, please. So the one in the fall was from TNTP. We came to you, we contracted with them, and this slide lists some of the major areas, and you can see how many students, parents, teachers, support staff, school leaders, and district offices, staff members participated in that survey, and we presented those results to you in November of 2020. So I don't want to go back over those, but in the fall, we did want to, because everything was new, really look in depth at the feedback, and then we took that feedback, the different teams reflected on it and made changes for the spring semester. Next slide, please. In the spring, the Public Education Department has a survey called the Opportunity to Learn Survey. We have had this for a number of years now. It used to be associated with testing, and then in recent years, it has been separate from testing. This year, it was administered on the Cognia platform for the first time. And they changed their typical questions to be focused more on the in-person and remote learning context, how the pandemic conditions affected perceptions of learning, access to devices and the internet, and access to instructional support. Their survey administration window was from May 3rd to 21st. And you can see we had almost 6,000 students and almost 700 staff members participate in that survey. Next slide. The district every year also administers a student satisfaction and safety survey. This is run out of student services in conjunction with RADA. This year, Tana and I collaborated to modify the questions to take into account both the in-person and the remote learning context. So they were similar questions as in the past, but we wanted to find out whether there are differences in perceptions based on the instructional learning context. And this had a slightly longer window, but was also in the spring from the end of April until the last day of school. And we had over 4,000 students in grades 5 through 12 participate. So as far as the instructional context goes, what the state survey asked what percentage of time they spent in person. And you can see it was about half and half. 48% said they spent half the time or more with in-person learning. That would be primarily elementary school students. And a little more than half said they spent less than half their time in in-person learning throughout the year. When looking at in their remote instruction, 78% said that their instruction took place virtually or online, with another 15% saying that it was a combination of virtual instruction together with packets that were sent home. So there was a combination of paper and also the online instruction. The majority of students reported that they participated in live lessons with their teacher about as often as they watched recorded lessons. So at times the teachers would front load, they would record their lecture and post that. And there were other times when they were face-to-face in a Google Meet with live instruction. And so overall, it seemed to be fairly well balanced between the two types of instructional delivery. One of the questions that's been brought up throughout the year is whether students have an appropriate environment in which to focus. About 2/3 of students reported that they had a private space to do their schoolwork, and a little less than 1/3 said that they needed to share their space. Another question has been whether students have access to devices and the internet. We know that the district provided a Chromebook to every student, but we also know that 3% of students said that they never had their own, that they always had to share. So you have the same question in questions 10 and 11, basically asking the same question a different way, and it was consistent, saying that 3% of the students reported that they were sharing their devices. It may be that they're sharing with other family members, that it's not with other students, but that there might be other people in their family who also would like access to the device. But the district did provide a Chromebook to every student. 63% of the students reported that they always or almost always had good internet access, and another 34% said that they sometimes. I would put myself under the sometimes category, as I'm sure many of you would. You know, many of us have fairly reliable internet, but sometimes, you know, our screen freezes. So overall, that's relatively good. We also have people who have limited data plans, so they may have good access for part of the month and then have very limited access for other parts of the month. Teachers also reported that for students participating in live lessons, that 86% said most or all of their students were able to access the live lessons without significant issues. And teachers reported that they themselves, 92% reported that they had good internet access when they were delivering the instruction. So for some of them, we broke it out by elementary, middle, or high. This is also from the OTL student survey. One of the questions has been whether students had access to support, instructional support in their household. And you can see that only 6% of the students at the elementary level said that no adult was available in the household to help them with remote learning. And that went up to 22% at the high school level. When they participated virtually, students, by and large, especially at the elementary and middle school level, reported that they were able to obtain help from their teacher most of the time or whenever they needed help. 12% of elementary school students said they had a tough time getting individual help from their teacher, about the same, 14% for middle, and that went up to 23% at the high school level. Teachers, however, high school teachers reported only 6% that their students could only reach them some of the times. And I think part of that may be that teachers have the high school level such large rosters that they're interacting with a lot of students. And so they feel like they're present, but some students may feel like, okay, I wasn't able to get the help that I needed from all of my teachers in the timely manner that I wanted. By and large, this is on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being strongly agree. So 4 would be agree, 3 would be neither agree or disagree. By and large, you can see that our students do believe that they were able to receive academic help when needed from adults at the school. The average was, for the most part, a 4 or higher, between agree and strongly agree. It is higher at the elementary level than middle or high school, and it's also higher in in-person instruction than in remote instruction. And that's a trend that we're going to see frequently. Teachers are clear and specific about what they want from me. Again, higher at the elementary level than the secondary level, and higher for in-person instruction than remote. Overall, my classroom learning is meaningful. You see similar trends. And again, the biggest dissatisfaction is with the remote instruction. This was an interesting question. How much have you learned this year compared to prior years? And we would think that almost everyone would say less, but 74% of elementary school students felt they learned as much or more as in prior years. That went down at the middle and the high school levels. Teachers were not quite as optimistic as elementary students, but I think we have data that shows that some students did very well and learned a lot. Others, it didn't work for everyone though. And some students were able to find their way and others not so much. This was an interesting one. Teachers treat students with respect. It's high, it's about between agree and strongly agree for all levels and both modes of instruction. It was a little bit higher for remote instruction than for in-person instruction. I feel supported and encouraged by my school. Again, overall positive, but lower at the secondary level than the elementary, and higher for in-person than remote instruction. I feel safe in classes and in my interaction with peers, again, between agree and strongly agree for all levels and both modes of instruction. And the last one is I'm satisfied overall with my school. And again, on the positive side, but stronger at the elementary level and stronger for in-person instruction. And with that, I stand for questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Miller. Dr. Cleveland, do you want to say anything before I go into questions?
No, I think these two are good information to have, but I'd like to hear the board's questions, and I'll try to respond to those. But I think Dr. Miller's done a great job on presenting it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cleveland, and thank you, Dr. Miller. Okay, we'll go ahead and start with questions through the board, and we'll start with Noreen Scott.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Wynn Coleman?
Hi, Dr. Miller. Thank you so much for presenting this. Would you just explain, and I know we've gone over this, but just kind of an overview of what asking these questions, how they're going to be used, what role they play in what we're going through?
We have had different teams looking at reentry into different areas, and so this data will be looked at them to see what has gone well, maybe where there's some dissatisfaction, and how we can improve.
Thank you. And would you, I know, you looking at the numbers here, I would be curious to hear from yourself or Dr. Cleveland, kind of what takeaways you have from these, kind of what you saw, what surprises there might be, what areas that you feel encouraged about, and some of the challenges that we need to overcome. And then I did want to ask before that question is answered, was this the complete survey that was provided to everybody. Were there any other questions, or is this everything?
These were the highlights of the survey questions. We can certainly get to you the results of each of the questions, but there are a number of questions, and we know the board meeting has limited time, and so we wanted to give you the highlights and not the answers to every question, but we certainly can provide that to you.
No, and thank you, and I appreciate that thoughtfulness. I'm just curious of the number of questions that were presented in the survey. You know, just a little bit of kind of an overview of the number of questions, because it was. I appreciate it being condensed. I'm just curious if it really was if you felt like it was a thorough enough assessment and with the information that you received.
The State Opportunity to Learn survey had 14 questions for students. They had some additional questions for teachers. I'm trying to jump between documents. And the student satisfaction survey is significantly lengthier, and because we had two different contexts, the ones that I didn't summarize all of them, but we had about 15 questions that we summarized, and there are some additional ones that ask them more questions about safety than I presented. But many of these questions were presented twice. Once with thinking about the time when you were at home learning remotely. How did you feel about this? And then also think of the time when you were at school, if you were at school. So we had more people respond to the virtual than to the in-person, because not everyone was in person this year. And we also don't want to overwhelm with the number of questions that we asked. So it was not as long as the survey that we gave in the fall from TNTP, but students saw probably about 30 questions from the district survey and about 14 from the state.
So who was it, and this might have been addressed, so I apologize if you explained this before, who compiled the questions? Did we do it internally, or was it the group that's doing the accreditation?
The accreditation surveys will be a little different. There are surveys from Cognia, the same platform actually as the State Opportunity to Learn survey. The State Opportunity to Learn survey was administered on Cognia. We were able to download the raw data, and from there my department compiled the responses into summary data and provided to the schools the responses for each school, as well as district-wide data. And the district student satisfaction and safety survey we administer on SurveyMonkey. And so that's compiled automatically by the system, and then we can share out the data from there.
Okay, thank you. And then if I could just go back to the one question that I was just curious about, if you and Dr. Cleveland might share your takeaways from the surveys, things that you were glad to see, things that you saw as challenges or surprises, and things that you feel we need to work on.
I'd like to defer to Dr. Cleveland for that, if she's.
Okay, yeah, I could share some of that, though I haven't really pulled all of my thoughts together. So just kind of quickly, I think one of the things that that we were gratified to learn from the survey is that many students did very well, that they learned a lot and they learned as much or more. What was not so good was it was about evenly divided between those who did pretty well with it and felt pretty good about it, and the other 50% that felt like it wasn't the best tool for them. And I think we knew that all along, but it certainly defies the idea that it was a lost year for everyone. Not at all. I mean, some people did very well with it. I think most of the challenges that they raised in the survey, we were already aware of. And so curriculum instruction kept revising the way we were delivering instruction to try to to address some of those concerns. So I think we had a much better approach the second semester, for example, at the high school than we did in the first. It was a learning experience, and as we learned, we modified and we changed. I think that the feedback on the effort, the care and effort of our teachers was very strong. They gave teachers a lot of credit for trying to do the very best they could. I think they were very honest about some of the things that they did and didn't do. That they didn't particularly like the take lessons. Honestly, most of us don't. And so that was an area where we were kind of expecting them to say they didn't like that. The other thing I think was very interesting was, they felt like they always had access to someone who could help them. And that was one of the things we were very worried about, was there a sense of helplessness, that, they were just out there drifting and didn't know how to get help. The survey suggests that was not the case. But what we have learned is that online platform is not for everyone. Not everyone does well with it. Not everyone likes it. And certainly we need to be able to provide in-person learning to many of our students who just felt like that was not the best way for them to learn. The other thing I think we learned out of it is that we really did improve a lot in terms of our technology aptitudes and our ability to utilize technology for the delivery of instruction. It was very clear that was an ongoing process throughout the year. And at the beginning of the year, it was not as strong as it was. It's really kind of sad. About the time we really got it all together, it was returned to hybrid learning, which we wanted, of course, but we wish we had had the other for a little bit longer period of time. But we did have many comments that came back on really complimenting our staff on their concern and care for the student and families. And that was especially gratifying to hear from the community. So those are just a few general thoughts. I'd certainly provide more specific. The other, I was really pleased that we had as many people respond. Surveys, people were pretty tired of surveys, and they were getting to the point where they didn't want to return them. And we were glad that we got an adequate response and a varied response for different groups of people in terms of providing feedback to the district. Abby, what would you add to that from are there any other highlights or things that you saw or were surprising to you or concerning to you?
No, I agree. I think there is a dichotomy in the data. And I don't think that's surprising to anyone. And I do think it supports, some students felt well supported and felt like they learned a lot and felt, they were able to reach people, and other people didn't feel, it really was a struggle for them. And I think that's something we've known, and I think, it's supported. And I also am actually pretty pleased with the digital equity type questions, the access, because I think some numbers might surprise a little. For example, the number of students who report that they have to share a device, given that we provided a device to every student. But there are contexts that we're not aware of. And I think overall, the folks in the district have worked very hard with our partners to try to ensure that students had access to online learning. And by and large, we succeeded. It's not perfect. It's not, it's a struggle, but by and large, I think we accomplished quite a bit last year.
I'd like to ask if there's any other, Carl or Jana or any others that would like to respond as well. If you have any comments you would like to make, we'd sure like to hear them.
Well, I think you summed it up very well, Dr. Cleveland. Happy. It's Carl Luppelman, Chief Academic Officer. I think we learned a lot, and I think as we got in the second semester, we made modifications. And it shows, I think, in the data that students did get access and the help they needed, obviously higher at the elementary level in face-to-face than in remote. But it does show, if you look at the scale, that most kids could access the help and get the help they needed. And I think that's really, really important. And I would like to really compliment IT and the work they did in terms of the wireless access. That took a lot of work. And I think also the collaboration between C9 and IT, I think that shows and all the departments, and making sure that the students got what they needed.
Does anybody else want to add anything? I would just conclude by saying, I think, again, it was not for everybody. And one of the things we learned from people who think that you could just deliver instruction always that way for every single person. I think we've had a really wonderful case study that shows that just is not the case. But we also have to recognize there's some students that liked it and did very well with it, would like to continue with that kind of learning delivery system. And we will try our best to deliver it for them. So one size does not fit all. I would also support what Carl said. The cooperation among departments was phenomenal, and particularly IT, stepping up and providing internet for over 800 families was really an incredible undertaking. And one of the things we find is when families get the internet, it opens the window to the world that they didn't have before. And just like the beginning of televisions, where people got their first television set, very few ever went back afterwards. It became an integral part of the American family. And I think it's the same for the internet access as for many families. It was the opening of a whole new world for them. And I really hope that most of them will stay with that and continue to provide that for their family members down in the future. So I do think that cooperation was necessary to deliver instruction. But I think it really means a whole lot more than that. I think it meant just an opportunity to have access to the rest of the resources that are needed today just to survive. And so it has become a utility, I think, more than an option. Are there any other questions?
Let me go over to, Wen, did you have more that you wanted to go off of before I went to the rest of the board?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Thank you for your responses.
Okay, thank you, Wen. Those were great questions. I appreciate you asking them. We'll go over to Catherine Cullen.
Thank you. And Dr. Cleveland, and maybe Carl can help out with this as well. Since the perceptions of learning in middle school and high school, and we know that some of them just really felt they didn't get the instruction level that they should have last year, to be able to, I guess, compared to the other years prior. Are we going to be offering tutoring again, some of those additional services to help out these students next year? Because I know that some of them are going to have to kind of catch up. We did see a lot of summer school classes, but I'm sure that some of them are going to be still feeling like they need some help.
How do you want to respond to that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that, yes, Dr. Cleveland, definitely will be offering that support, additional support through extended learning programs for additional tutoring. I think that's obviously going to be a need. We continue to look at Saturday school like we've done before to recapture credits. I think credit recovery will be looked at differently also. We're looking at providing that at every site versus at the centralized secondary learning center. So I think that's going to be an advantage. And so I think those are some of the things. We're looking at Student Support Center, the things we could do there. So definitely additional supports for SEL, for certainly social emotional supports, additional counseling and social work support, I think is going to be critical, because some of the students also they can't access the academics because they're having some social emotional trauma or whatever that may be occurring in their life. So I think those are important wraparound services that we provided. Also, we utilized Medicaid dollars to provide an additional nurse at each high school. And I think that's really important. So Dr. Cleveland, I'll turn it over to you. There's some things we can continue to do. Renee is not here tonight, but we're currently looking at how can we provide more capacity, I think is a good term, for our students who might have gaps, but also how do we accelerate? We've learned a lot through technology that we can actually accelerate some of the learning through that process. Go ahead, Sue, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Just two quick comments regarding that. One of the not so good things that's occurred is as social emotional learning has become more important, not only in schools, but in other organizations. We're seeing some of our counselors lured away to the private sector for considerably more money. And so we're rarely down 6 counselors. It's a really a rare thing in our district, but that's something we're going to have to deal with. And we're glad to see other organizations are putting an importance on it. We are going to continue with tutoring. We feel like that helped a lot last year. We had a lot of positive feedback. One of the things that I've heard from several of our teachers is that they felt like through the Google Meets, they knew their students better than they ever had. It was that one-on-one time where the teacher had, your complete attention, an opportunity to talk face-to-face. And so that's one of the lessons learned, is that Google Meets can be very helpful on a one-on-one basis. Teachers also said that students were more comfortable in a Google Meet situation than they were in face-to-face sometimes. And but that's an area where we're going to continue to build, to offer those opportunities for students to talk directly with their teachers when they are having challenges. But definitely tutoring will continue. And that's one of the things that we also think really made a difference last year. And we're going to continue those services into the new year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Noreen, did you have another question? I saw that you had a hand raised earlier.
No, it's not a question. I just wanted to make a comment that I don't think a lot of folks in Rio Rancho really understood the Herculean effort it was to get children the internet and to get the Chromebooks out. And not every school district in the country was able to accomplish what we were. And I really think that kudos go to the entire team for working so hard to get education out. And it really showed the values in our community for education. And I just wanted to make that comment. I know I've said it before, but it really stands out. I've talked to family members in other districts around the country who are not as fortunate as we have been.
That's a good comment, Noreen. I agree. I'm very grateful as a parent. I was very grateful that all of my kids were able to have Chromebooks and all the access that they needed, and especially with my husband and I both working from home as well, and so our families needed that, and so it was a great effort. I've talked to a few individuals who talked about trying to get those Chromebooks out, and they've done some of the returns, and just how it was a lot for everyone to do that. And so very much, I think you used the word kudos, and I agree with that. I would say we're very grateful that we're able to do that in the district. So thank you to all who were able to do that. Any other questions from the board on this? So this was one of the ones that the board had requested that, we kind of got some information about lessons learned that happened through the pandemic. Do you feel like this covered some of those things that you all wanted to know about? Is there additional things that I know when maybe would you like when to have that full report of the questions? Would you like Dr. Miller to send that out? Is that something you're interested in?
I mean, I would be curious to see the extent of the different questions. It's something that can just be put on shared drive, just to see. So, and I know it's a couple of different surveys that were all kind of put together here. So, so thank you.
Okay. All right. Dr. Cleveland, anything else from you on this before we move?
No, I don't have anything else if there's no questions.
Okay.
Just thanks everybody who put this together. We did learn a lot, and I think that's the most important thing is that we did learn a lot. And a lot of things will be better as a result of the experience last year. That being said, we're very eager to keep our schools open and to be able to provide parents with a choice what works best for their child and their family. So we're very optimistic, hopeful that will be the case this year.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cleveland. Thank you, Dr. Miller, too. We appreciate I always appreciate when you bring all these numbers and we get to see all these things. So thank you for that. Real quick, just one note, if Kim could just reflect in the minutes, Jeffrey Morgan had to step out, that was at 6:18. If you could just reflect that in the minutes, I'd appreciate it. We'll go to our next report, which is the school reentry toolkit update for 2021-2022 school year. Beth Pendergrass, our Chief Communications Strategy Engagement Officer, will be presenting this for us tonight. And Beth, I just have to say before you even get started, the new website is looking spectacular. And so I just have loved looking at it. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I haven't had a chance to say that to you and to your group.
Thank you. Good evening, President Galbraith, members of the board, and Dr. Cleveland. I am here tonight to go over briefly the New Mexico Public Ed Department's COVID-19 response toolkit for the new school year. And of course, as you know, this is subject to change as things change with COVID. You know, as we saw last year, they update the toolkit regularly and send us new versions of it. But I apologize that you didn't get this sooner. As you know, the toolkit was released today at 1 o'clock to the public. And so we put together some slides for you for this evening. And while we've been waiting with bated breath for this, we would love to be in a position where a toolkit was not necessary. And it's been hard already to see the struggles that families are having. There's so much frustration already, even since 1 o'clock. We're seeing just so many families frustrated on both sides of the coin, you know, with masks or not enough masks, or and so it's a challenge to be in the spot where we have to deliver something that is it's not our plan, but it is the plan that we have. And so I want to go through what that is. Next slide, please. So masks. All individuals in elementary schools, regardless of vaccination status, are required to wear a mask at all times. For secondary schools, they're saying that students, staff, and volunteers who are vaccinated do not need to wear a mask. And those who are unvaccinated will need to wear a mask. Those who are vaccinated will have to provide proof that they've been vaccinated in order not to wear a mask. Next slide, please. Schools must identify a process for ensuring compliance with mask requirements. So Dr. Cleveland mentioned this earlier, the posting of signs, that's not a problem. Announcing mask requirements at events and other, but also we have to come up with a plan for how to track students who are vaccinated or not vaccinated and determine how we can allow some students to wear masks and others not to wear masks. Secondary schools, so like Dr. Cleveland said, this really sets a baseline. It doesn't prevent school districts from going further with the requirements. So we could become more restrictive. And reasons for that might include if there's increasing substantial COVID-19 transmission, if we're seeing community transmission, if we don't have a great system to monitor the vaccine status, if we're having a difficult time enforcing the mask wearing, if we have low vaccination rates, or if we hear from our community, that's what they would like. Next slide, please. Masks are not required outdoors for any individual. And then unvaccinated spectators are required to wear masks at indoor events. However, they're not required to provide evidence of vaccination status. So very similar to the health order for those events. Next slide. Mask enforcement. So within the toolkit, they tell us if a student removes a face mask and refuses to wear the mask, then that student must be picked up from school and taken home. We are required to update our student discipline matrices to add an addendum that would describe the consequences for violating mask wearing requirements. We need to update this by September 1st. In addition, it has to be sent to parents, and we have to collect signatures that indicate they received the matrices. Next slide, please. This is something that's good news for close contacts. The definition hasn't really changed. Someone who over a 24-hour period has a cumulative exposure of 15 minutes or longer within 3 to 6 feet a confirmed COVID-19 case. And I say 3 to 6 feet because they say 3 feet for students, 6 feet for adults. But there is an exception in a K-12 indoor classroom setting Close contact definition excludes students who are within 3 to 6 feet of an infected individual, where both students were engaged in consistent and correct use of well-fitting face masks and other K-12 school prevention strategies were in place, so distancing, proper ventilation. So if we're doing things properly, we're not going to be quarantining full classrooms, again, so long as students are wearing those masks and they're following our other COVID safe practices. Next slide. We're still required to have a COVID-19 point of contact. We're still required to have our care rooms at each campus. The rapid response tasks will still be required for each case. And along those lines, they are still determining whether or not schools will have to shut down after 4 rapid response cases. They have not confirmed that yet or not. Contact tracing and notification to stakeholders will still need to take place. The air filtration guidelines are still in place. Some changes with reporting, that's good news. We only need to report those who were infectious while on campus. So last year, we got some cases that the student might have gone home a week ago. They were tested, they became positive, but they were never on campus during the infectious time, which is usually 2 days before symptoms or 2 days before positive test if they're asymptomatic. So we will only need to report those who were infectious, and the reporting will be able to happen by next business day. So those who are completing those PED reports, when we get cases in the evening, well, we'll still need to contact the close contacts. We won't need to complete those reports until the next business day. And same on the weekend. If we have a case on the weekend, they won't need to complete that PED report until Monday. We will, however, still need to notify the environmental department if it's a staff member within 4 hours. That's regardless of time of day or day of week. Next slide. The COVID-19 surveillance testing is still going to be required for all schools providing in-person student services. So for staff members, and so this will be only for staff members who aren't vaccinated or those who have not tested positive of COVID. Next slide. So we'll need to ensure that 25% of our faculty and staff who have not provided evidence of a vaccine are tested each week or once a week, or one time a month, or 25% each week, And no staff member is going to be required to participate in weekly surveillance testing more than every 4 weeks. Staff members selected for testing should provide evidence to the school their results were received during the assigned week. So that hasn't changed much except the percent. And then we're also going to need to continue to provide student surveillance testing for our students and for our student athletes. This is not, it's voluntary for our families, and the goal is 25% of unvaccinated students each week. So the part I highlighted below has always been kind of problematic to us. We're required to report the number of students tested for COVID-19 each week through the portal. We have no problem with staff because we assign them and they have to submit their results to us. It's more challenging to ask families to volunteer and try and collect those results from them. And so that's kind of been problematic. And so we're working on ways with the state on how we can do that better. Next slide, please. COVID safe practices. Teachers are to maintain seating charts. Water fountains this year are okay, but they are considered high touch areas for cleaning. Lockers are okay unless they become a place where students congregate. When high schools is probably going to be a place where students congregate. Unvaccinated adults must complete screening prior to entering a school district facility. So if they're vaccinated, so our teachers who are vaccinated or students do not have to do the screening. Only the unvaccinated adults would have to complete the screening. Out of state and overnight travel is okay. Board meetings and staff meetings may be in person or virtual. And then cleaning and disinfecting schedules need to be maintained. Next slide, please. So food service, to the greatest extent possible, maximize physical distance as much as possible when moving through the food service lines and while eating. Using outdoor spaces whenever we can. They think that we should have unvaccinated students eat outside or sit on one side of the table and maintain greater than 3 feet of distance from others. Transportation, all unvaccinated students and staff must wear face masks. To the greatest extent possible, they say 2 passengers per seat. And then other recommendations they have hand sanitizer dispensers, driver shields, passenger curtains. They want to ensure buses have extra masks available if someone shows up and doesn't have a mask. And then they want buses to implement loading and unloading procedures, including assigned seating. And that mainly is for the purpose of helping with contact tracing if you have a positive case and to limit exposure. Travel, meetings, field trips. So out of state and overnight travel is okay for students and staff. However, unvaccinated students can only share rooms with individuals from the same household, or they have to have their own room. We in Rio Rancho, we are requiring that a parent or legal guardian stay with an unvaccinated student so that they're not alone in a hotel room. We kind of see that as a safety issue. Board meetings, again, may be in person or virtual in order to better protect community members, and staff meetings may be in person or virtual. Field trips are allowed and should be limited to essential purposes. And you see I put an asterisk next to these. That's just the reminder that you still have to maintain all your COVID safe practices, distancing, mask wearing, etc. In any of those instances. Next slide, please. School-related events are allowed, but must be limited, again, to essential events. Schools should limit non-essential visitors, but we can have parents and we can have volunteers on campus. Adults who come on campus during school hours without evidence of a vaccination are required to complete the COVID screening. Next slide. Singing and playing wind instruments. So unvaccinated students may not share instruments or supplies. Unvaccinated students must have their own instrument-specific multi-layered cloth mask for singing or playing a wind instrument, or instrument-specific multi-layered cloth bell cover for playing wind instruments. And unvaccinated students must be trained on protocols to ensure that students maintain social distancing while playing and singing, and 3 feet at all other times, especially when assembling and disassembling instruments. And then also they're saying that they need to use disposable absorbent pads or other receptacles where possible to catch the condensation expelled from water keys. And so that is your singing and playing wind instruments. Next slide. So just this is kind of wrap up what's going to look different. So we know that students aren't going to see the plastic barriers in cafeterias anymore. They're going to be able to share equipment, PE, balls and books, different things of that nature. They're not going to see tape to line the hallways anymore. Full classes aren't going to be asked to quarantine so long as the appropriate COVID safe practices are used. And I mean, that's a huge change for this year. We're not going to be sending an entire classroom home for 10 days to learn from home as long as we're following the right protocols. Masks are not required outdoors for any individual. So recess outside, athletics outside, masks are not required. Our schools this year are going to be full. That is new this year. And it's also, this is challenging. There's a lot of challenges in this, but it's pretty exciting to say that we are 100% open for in-person learning, and we haven't seen that for over a year. And so I'm trying to find the positive in that, and I stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Beth. I'm trying to gather my thoughts here, so thank you for that. I'm gonna go. Let's see. Dr. Cleveland, do you have anything before I go to questions?
Just a reinforcement of slide 5. Those are the decisions that the board will need to make and make as soon as possible, so that we can let parents know, preferably before the start of school. So those are what goes into the addendum to the discipline matrix, and also how many warnings the student would have before they are assigned to remote learning. So hopefully we can have a special meeting and discuss those fairly soon, so that families are aware of what the processes will be for our district.
Claudia, can you go back to slide 5 really quick? I have those written down, but I just want to make sure. I just want to take a look at it one more time. Okay. Okay.
I do think that for the administration, for the staff, the greatest challenge will be the full evidence of vaccination and what that's going to look like. And so we will also want to have a conversation with the board about what that looks like after we've had a chance to talk with our staff, our principals, and others about how we might do that and be as unintrusive as we can possibly be, but still meet the requirements by the public ed department. The full evidence in display is what is a little challenging for us right now to figure out.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Let me go over to Wynn. Do you have any questions, comments?
No, I don't. Thank you, Beth.
Okay. And Catherine?
Thank you. Yeah, because I did write that on this that so it looks like we have to update the matrix for the discipline, and then it also says on page 14, the response toolkit. It says that for unvaccinated staff members who refuse to wear a mask, HR policy will dictate disciplinary actions, and whether the individual may choose to take leave. So I guess you guys are all going to have to update that as well for staff.
Yeah, that'd be right. We'd have to bring that to you as policy.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And then as well as visitors, it looks like on page 15 as well, when I was going through this. The other thing is obviously the concern, and I wish I would have notated it, is identifying the students of who's been vaccinated and who hasn't. That's a major concern for me. And are we going to get obviously PED has their opinion on it. Are we going to have a legal opinion on that as well? Are we going to go out to the attorneys for that?
So PED did give their legal opinion on it that, and we can't force it of students or staff to tell us, but if they don't want to wear a mask, then that's their prerogative to let us know.
Right, but they're saying that we need to publicly identify them, like a color code, lanyard, something like that. And that's my concern.
There's a lot of struggles and concerns around that, and I don't think we've found the right answer for that.
Okay, and will we get some more information by the next time that we meet in reference to that? If there is, I mean, I guess PED's looking at it saying, hey, we're good to go. But of course, I have some concerns as a board member, and any type of legal ramifications that can come back on us as well is identifying our students being vaccinated or not vaccinated. So I think that might be something that we might want to take a look at.
It's definitely something we're looking at, and you're not alone in those concerns, definitely. Dr. Cleveland, I don't know if you want to add to that.
They have their legal offices determined that it does not violate FERPA, and they have given us a lot of rationale about why they believe it is safe to make that requirement. They've suggested things like different colored badges or different kinds of things that are not terribly intrusive. My concern is making the teachers become the policemen in policing this. And so that's why some districts are choosing all masks in the classroom, so that teachers don't have to be in a situation in which they're calling students out in class and telling them they have to put their mask on. But again, that's something that the board will need to discuss. And what are what are our options? But that is why some districts are going all masked in classrooms. They're not wanting to make teachers have to administer any kind of policing in the classroom and take time away from teaching and learning. So there are different approaches to it, but certainly that's one that some districts are going to use. That you can take your mask when you step out of the classroom, but in the classroom everybody wears one. Others are not going that direction. at all. I did want to back up just back to one further question. The state has said that wearing a mask is a condition of employment. And so that is a decision that the board will be able to make. They have determined that it is a condition of employment. And so, and in a brief conversation with the union, I think they are aware of that. That I've also had that discussion as well with the state, but I certainly don't speak for them. So that's, but it is, I want to be very clear, the state's position is, it is a condition for employment. So if you do not produce a vaccine, then you must wear a mask. If you don't want to tell us one way or the other, and that's your privacy right, then you have to wear a mask. So that's the option. You don't have to tell us. In the absence of telling us, the absence of informing us, then the mask becomes mandatory for you.
I see this can be very problematic for the school year. Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's we can go back over to Wynn. Go ahead, Wynn.
To Catherine's point, I know that I believe this was something that was discussed as a part of the toolkit, but my concern is what might happen even between students when one is identified as having the vaccination, one is not. Kind of, I could just see this being a very intense issue, even talking about addressing potentially bullying, and if that actually gets back home, discussions about what kids are vaccinated, those privacy issues that I think really are kind of related to FERPA and kind of what that might mean. So,
and Board Member Coleman, what that is also one of the reasons that some districts are choosing to do all masks is the issue of bullying and identification, and then not wanting to have students singled out. So that's one of their that's part of their rationale for just replying mask requests.
Okay. We can go over to Noreen.
I really have no questions. I think that it's pretty clearly outlined, and we have maybe one or two little nuances that we have a say on, and that's it.
I think you're right in that. And I do want you to know there have been a lot of discussion between superintendents and the public ed department, and certainly a large number of superintendents are very much in disagreement with the outline. But you're right, that's what we have been doing.
Okay. Yeah, I have all the same concerns. I don't know. I would like for our students not to have to wear masks, but it is concerning all these other things. So what are we looking at for a special meeting? Are we trying to hit something maybe Friday, or are we looking next week early on Monday? Just out of curiosity, have you kind of thought about what day we're looking at so far?
Yeah, we would like it to be a little later in the week so we have time to talk with our staff, particularly our principals, and what suggestions they might have for this and their concerns. So I think a Friday or Monday would be great, either one of those. But we definitely would like to have at least a couple of days to be able to work on this with our staff. So I think a Friday or Monday would be great. I think the board is often used to Monday meetings, and it's going to put us pretty tight, but we can certainly get the information out after Monday. Any later than that will be very, very difficult to make sure everybody is informed about the board's decision.
Okay. So as a board, if we can just kind of keep that in mind, that we're going to have the special meeting in the next few days, and just kind of look at your calendars and see if we can do that. Catherine, go ahead.
Sorry. One of the other things is they had said that they will have the parents will always have the option to move their children into remote learning at any point during the school year. So are we going to be able to handle that because that really could be kind of problematic as well. We saw that last year. We had people going back and forth, and under their remote learning questions and answers, they say that that's an option at any time. So what are we looking for that? No, sorry, go ahead.
You know, and others may want to jump in on that. Honestly, this is one of the things I really don't see how we're going to manage very well, because we have limited staffing. And so you can't just keep moving teachers from virtual to in person and restructuring classes. When you restructure classes, you affect all of the family, all of the kids and parents in that class. And so just at any time is going to be very problematic. But we'll do like we did last year. I love the term in the toolkit. It applies in some circumstances and not others, to the greatest extent possible. And we will do it to the greatest extent possible. But it is going to be very hard to do it, you know, back and forth, back and forth. And last year we gave people a chance to move once, but not multiple times, because we just couldn't keep jerking people around. So that will also be a very big challenge to make happen. And I don't know that we are going to be able to do it completely anytime. So our goal is going to be make it as good an experience as we can. And if we have concerns that are raised, we try to work very hard with the parents and families to alleviate those concerns, so they won't feel like they have to move or have to change. So, and I think most of the time last year, that's exactly what happened. Particularly, I don't know if Jana Shalot wants to comment on that. I know we worked really hard to work with the families, and most times we were able to sit down, hear their concerns, and fix whatever it was that was a problem for them. So we will continue to try to do that. But that is almost impossible at times to do. And that we will do the very best we can with it. But I don't know that we'll be able to do it on a moment's notice. We put people on waiting lists and try to accommodate them as quickly as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if you see me looking up, it's because I have my brightness all the way down because my computer's about to die and I have the wrong charge cord. So I just want you all to know why I'm looking up. Any other questions from the board on anything? Okay. Okay, well, thank you so much, Beth, for giving us this presentation. I think it's somewhat what we thought might be coming, but there's a lot of things in there too that need a lot, that have a lot that need to be worked out. So we appreciate putting this out with such late notice of you receiving it. So thank you for the presentation today. We appreciate it. Dr. Cleveland, anything else as I move on?
Welcome back. We're moving now pretty quickly to get schools open, and we have just a lot of really good things going on. And so I really want to stress that we're dealing with a couple of these issues that are somewhat problematic, but our schools, we have a couple of issues there, and as soon as we know more about that, we will let you know, what the timetable is. And there's a possibility that a couple of schools might have to be delayed a few days in order to get everything ready, but we'll let you know, and probably that next meeting will be a good time to talk about that if we need to talk about it. However, if we do have information earlier than that, we will certainly send it to the board right away. So it's we do have a couple of schools that are not looking really good at this point.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. So as we get ready to move on to our next part, there's something I did incorrectly. So really quick, so because the agenda was approved with that commendation on it, we need to vote to remove it and add it to our next agenda. Is there anyone willing to make a motion to do that?
I move that we move the accommodation to the next meeting. This is Secretary Noreen Scott.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Board Member Catherine Collin.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion by Noreen Scott, a second by Catherine Cullen. And Kim, can you take a roll call vote for us on it?
Oh, I can. Vice President Morgan. Okay. Secretary Scott.
Yes.
Member Cullen.
Yes.
Member Coleman.
Yes.
And President Galbraith.
Yes.
Okay, that's approved 4-0.
Okay, thank you. So that motion carries. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So moving on to our consent, to approve the consent agenda. Is there anything that needs to be moved off the consent, or is there a motion to approve?
This is Board Member Coleman. I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a second.
This is Board Member Catherine Cullen. I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Coleman, a second by Board Member Catherine Cullen. And Kim, can you take a roll call vote for us on this one?
Yes, I can. Vice President Morgan, Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Cullen,
Yes.
Board Member Coleman,
Yes.
President Galbraith,
Yes.
and that is 4-0.
Thank you. That motion carries. Okay. Moving into business. Trying to make sure there's nothing I miss. I have so many notes on my page. Moving into business, it's to consider the approval of unapproved 7/12/2021 RRPS Board of Education meeting minutes. Is there anything that needs to be changed on those minutes? Do we have a motion to approve?
This is Board Member Catherine Cullen. I make a motion to approve 7/12/2021 Board of Education meeting minutes.
This is Board Member Coleman. I second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Catherine Cullen and a second by Wynn Coleman. It is hard to say both of your names at the same time. Thank you. Kim, can you take a roll call vote for us?
Oh, I'm glad it's not just me. Vice President Morgan, Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Cullen,
Yes.
Board Member Coleman,
Yes.
and President Galbraith.
Yes.
And that is 4-0.
Thank you. That motion carries. Okay. Moving into our advanced planning. So also, once again, keeping in mind that we're going to have a special board meeting either this Friday or Monday. Then on July 26, 2021, we have our next regular board meeting. It will be in the boardroom and virtual. July 27th through the 28th is a Tech Time virtual conference.
I have a question in reference to
Yeah.
that. Do we have information on that since that is on our board?
I haven't seen anything. Kim, have you seen anything come through?
I haven't accepted it's happening. I was just asked to put it on.
So Paul, are we to be on that? I don't know because it's on our advanced planning for the board. Is anybody out there? Anybody still on?
I don't know. We'll have to look at it and see if we need to be on there. Sometimes we just have some of those things on there.
I'll try to get you some information. I think it's optional if you want to take some of the sessions.
Okay, thank you. We are echoing. I can't figure out where our echo is coming from, but okay, thank you. And make sure I don't miss anything now. Okay, August 5th is our first day of classes for middle and high school. August 9th will be the first day of classes for elementary schools. Also on August 9th, we will have a regular board meeting at 5:30 here in the boardroom and virtual. August 19th, there will be an audit committee open meeting and an executive session that will be at 4:30 virtual on that. And August 23rd will be another regular board meeting, 5:30 in the boardroom and virtual. And with that, tonight, our meeting's adjourned. Thank you everyone so much.